Minute while everyone joins in. So, hi guys, how's it going? I'm going to be going live tonight with Jewish Fertility Foundation. Here she comes. Let's see. Connecting. Hi, what's up,
Hello.
gorgeous?
How are
I'm
you?
good. How are you, my love?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I'm excited.
Good, me too. Guys, so I want to introduce everyone who's tuning in. This is Elana Frank. She
Hello.
is the founder of Jewish Fertility Foundation, and we've gotten to know each other a little bit over the past week or two, and she's just amazing. She has an incredible story, but I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of background about Jewish Fertility Foundation and what they do. They are based in Atlanta, but they're expanding beyond that. And they have what they do is they provide financial support for couples who are experiencing infertility issues. They also provide emotional support, which is an important component that is a lot of times overlooked. And they provide educational resources, which I think it can be complicated when you're talking about Judaism, medicine, and just like the emotional component of it all and weaving all of that together. And so they're kind of there for every aspect to educate one another about the whole process of being a Jewish person who's experiencing infertility. And through their emotional support programs, not only do they provide uh, support groups, which are great, which is amazing. They even have now going on with Zoom and digitally, but they also provide a mentoring type program, peer to peer, to pair people who are going through infertility with other people who have gone either are going through it or have been through it themselves. And I think personally that is what got me through this many years ago when I first started experiencing the infertility process. What got me through it was having other people who had been through it before to make me feel less alone and to kind of just walk me through it. And so to have that as like a formal resource now is really amazing. So thank you, Alana.
Um, awesome. So I'm excited to be here tonight
You
and get
too.
to talk with you. We have lots of people I see following us, and they've asked questions for later on. But perhaps you can share a little bit more for the people who are coming through our audience about your personal
Right.
story.
So I have had quite the journey, like many, like you, and
Yep.
many of the people that I'm sure are joining. And if you guys are just joining us, I am going to be saving this for the next 24 hours, so you'll be able to see everything. But I basically I've been married now over 10 years, and about 9 years ago, my husband and I started trying. We didn't know what that meant. We just thought having unprotected sex and
Yep.
whoops, you get pregnant. That's what you're told your whole life. My
Yep.
mom made me so nervous my whole life. She said, Lizzie, we're very fertile in our family. Well, apparently she didn't mean me. But so I had no idea what was going on. I was so young and naive. And at, the age of 25, it never occurred to me that I would experience challenges getting pregnant. Um, and I don't know that I certainly would have rushed to seek help with that, but thank God my husband did. He's in the medical world and he had the foresight to see that my periods were irregular and things weren't happening on their own. And we needed to, even if we weren't in a rush to get pregnant, we needed to kind of figure out what was going on. And so, after waiting that time period that you have to wait to see a fertility doctor, by the time you get up the courage to call the fertility doctor, it's been however many months, and then they tell you it's going to be however many months until you get in for your appointment. So there's a lot of waiting involved. And so by the time you actually get there, it's frustrating and you're ready. And to then hear that you have whatever problems you have is hard.
Right.
So I found out that I had hypothalamic amenorrhea, which means that I don't ovulate. I don't have polycystic ovaries. I just don't ovulate. Even when I get my period, it's not because I've dropped an egg. It's just like a shed lining. So, um, anyway, it took me, we went through 6 IUIs, nothing worked, and then eventually did IVF, and I got pregnant with my oldest daughter, Stella. She's 7.5. And then about a year later, went back in, had an embryo frozen, and had my next daughter, Juliet. I thought, it took us so long. What I thought was so long. Your standards for all that change as you go through it. And I had my second daughter, Juliet, relatively easily, just popped in the frozen embryo. I know that sounds very glamorous, but it really was a pretty painless process. So in my mind, I guess I kind of thought once I got to the IVF stage that it would always be that easy. Again, I was very naive. And we ended up waiting a while to try again because I wasn't ready. And when we did, ended up with 3 lost pregnancies in 1 year. So 3 rounds of IVF, 2 ectopic pregnancies, one of which ended with an emergency surgery. I lost one of my tubes, and then a miscarriage, and relatively early miscarriage. So it was just a really crazy emotional roller coaster to go through. And I had to do another retrieval, and so it was. I had 3 frozen embryos that I got from that retrieval, and we genetic tested them all, and nothing worked. And then somehow my husband convinced me to try again just this year in February. And we had a crazy reaction, and ended up in the hospital because I was having, my immune system couldn't handle the progesterone, the exogenous progesterone. It was just being overloaded with it. And I ended up having this really dangerous reaction. Was in the hospital for a few days. I just found out that that I had a positive pregnancy test. And of course, because of my experience, I didn't think that meant anything safe. I just thought, well, okay, this is step one. And as I was in the hospital, they told me that the HCG, the pregnancy hormone level, was dropping, and that the pregnancy was not viable. They were concerned it was ectopic. And then lo and behold, I'm actually pregnant. So, it's kind of a crazy end to the story, because it just really goes to show you that even with all of this medicine and science and how much we know, at the end of the day, there is a huge God component, and we only can control what we can. And it's great that we have modern science and the ability to invest in these help thing. I wouldn't have children without it, but at the end of the day, it's still very much out of our hands, and that's been my lesson in all of this. That's kind of where I am today. So
thank you for sharing.
Thank you. I would love to hear your story as well, and I know my followers would love to hear it too.
So we actually have a lot of similarities in our story. I also thankfully have 3 children right now, and the process to getting them was not easy. Right. I've been married a little over 11 years now, and when I got married, I thought, like you have sex and you make babies. And I also, like, my mom taught me, be careful. And yeah, so I had moved to Israel right when I got married, about 11 years ago. My husband and I made Aliyah. And we didn't move to like Jerusalem or Tel Aviv. We moved to northern Israel, and we were going to make lots and lots of babies. We always had this like number in our head of 4. And I just honestly didn't I just assumed it was going to happen. Right when we started trying, after about a year of being married, also not using protection, but like really trying. After only 3 months, I felt in my gut like something was wrong. And I went to the doctor in Israel, and we were like new immigrants in Israel and didn't quite understand how socialized medicine worked. Because we are American. And I went to the doctor, and she asked me how long I've been married, not how long I've been trying. So I'd been married already over a year. Okay. No tests, nothing. And she gave me Clomid, which was going to stimulate my egg production.
Right.
So I knew it. I was going to get pregnant that month. And I just like, I don't know. I was naive. I don't know what it was, but I was oblivious. And obviously I didn't get pregnant month after month after month. I remember going back and she's like, you actually have milk in your breasts. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she did test to see if I had high prolactin levels. Like now looking back, I look at all these things, but okay, fine. I wasn't telling anybody at that point about what I was going through because I just figured, okay, like I'll go on some pills and get pregnant.
Right.
And I was also like in the middle of nowhere, Israel.
And you were young.
I was 29 at that time. So yeah, yes, young. And I didn't even know anything about infertility at all. I remember I was going to lunch or something with my aunt in Israel, who's Israeli and part of the medical system. And I mentioned something and I was like, yeah, like we're having a hard time. Of course, the first thing she said, sorry if she's on here, hopefully she's not, but she's like, do you not know how to have sex? You know, why don't you go on a vacation and just relax? Like all the typical things now I know people can say to like really hit you in the gut.
Right.
And like, I'm like, maybe I don't know how to have sex. I don't know. You know, you just are so in your head. And luckily, she's like, okay, well, just go to this doctor. I wasn't part of his insurance. So like, I'm American and normally in socialized medicine, you're not like writing checks, but I was like, okay, I'll write a check. I was driving an hour away at like 9:30 at night and I was doing IUIs in the basement of this doctor's house. And this was like a real doctor.
Oh my
God.
Like your parents would have been having a heart attack if they knew.
Thank God they didn't know. But the truth is like, what would they have said? I would have been like, no, like my aunt gave me this number.
It's normal.
Like, it's normal. That's what you do. Because nobody else knows about infertility and what you do. And my husband was like, okay, we want a child. This is what we're going to do. It wasn't a question. We didn't know you should probably do testing. You know, like we didn't know what to ask. Right. And they were doing, literally my husband was going, I hope you can't hear this, but he was going in the bathroom in this doctor's basement. I mean, it was his house, but it was like a basement, I guess you would say office. But it was like his guest bathroom and he was doing his business. There was a microscope on the counter. Like, yes, it was his office. And he was looking at my husband's sperm and he was saying, well, actually your husband has a problem. His sperm is bad, which wasn't the case. Like it was not the case. And so we're like, oh, okay. So, well, we're going to do the IUI. Now he never checked me once. He did IUIs month after month after month. Obviously
had no idea what your anatomy situation was.
No. I mean, I was 29. I was healthy, right? I don't know what his rationale is. I can't speak for him. But we were writing him a check every month. And it was nothing like American payments. It was more, I think it was probably equivalent to like maybe $500 or something like that. Like nominal in America, in Israel, a little bit more expensive. Anyway, I wasn't getting pregnant. And after a while, my husband and I, probably around 6 months or so, my husband and I are like, this feels weird. Like something doesn't feel right. We didn't know what didn't feel right at the time, but it didn't feel right. And so we did a little investigation and we found a doctor within our own insurance. We had to wait a few months. And at that time, it was like around New Year's and my parents, my mom and my grandmother and my husband and I went to Eilat for like New Year's. And man, like it was already like we were well into a year of all of this. And like I never said anything to my family. And I remember I needed to catch a flight back from Eilat to the north. And the flight got canceled. And the reason I needed to catch the flight was because I had this doctor's appointment.
Of course.
And I've never been so crazy in my life. And finally, I had to tell my mom what was going on. And they just had no idea. Like they didn't want to say anything to us. Like they were a little confused. We're like modern Orthodox. Why aren't you having kids right away? I was already at that point 29, which is not old, but okay.
But you weren't ready to open up about it.
I didn't even know how to open up about it. Like I literally thought I was the only one in the world going through this. I literally did at the time.
So interesting.
And anyway, we made it back. I missed the appointment, but I was able to thankfully reschedule it. And I met this doctor, my God, my doctor. And one of the first things he did was he checked my fallopian tubes and they were blocked. It was a very, very painful procedure. He translated in Hebrew to an X-ray. So at that point, we had been through so many things together that I was like, oh, to my husband, you don't have to come to this. It's just an X-ray.
Right.
I remember I was wearing, maybe this is TMI, I was wearing thong underwear and I was going to go to work afterwards.
But you didn't think anything of it.
I left there just like crying, bleeding everywhere. They gave me cotton, literally cotton. And I didn't.
So Israeli.
But you know what? After that, I learned my tubes are blocked. This whole time, the only way I was going to ever get pregnant was through IVF. And if I did IUI and got pregnant for whatever reason, it would have been an ectopic pregnancy. It would have hurt me. It would. Thank God I did it. Nothing happened. Anyway, fast forward, I ended up back in the doctor's office. He typed on his computer. This is not the case in America. And he's like, oh, okay. Well, if you want to get pregnant, let's do IVF. You're eligible. And within 3 months, I was able to retrieve eggs, a significant amount of eggs. It was almost 20 eggs. And we made something like 14 or so embryos. We didn't test them because nobody told us to, and we didn't know how, and we didn't know what to ask. Our doctor at the time was like, do not go online, which is interesting advice. But at the time, the type of personality I am, like I would have just obsessed about everything. And he's like, just trust me, let's work together. So thankfully I ended up getting pregnant with twins the first time, and we ended up with one, and that one now is almost 9 years old. And remember, I had all these extra embryos, so I didn't know how long it was going to take for me to, remember we wanted 4 kids. So I was just going to try after 1 year again to try to get pregnant. And again, it worked, kind of like you, like, okay, after that, it just worked. That's how I'm going to get pregnant and grow my family. And again, we had 2 and we lost 1, and we have now an almost 7. So that's that. And then we ended up moving back to America, and that's really when my 5 years of trying to grow my family the way that I had hoped really started getting hard. I had embryos back in America, and back in Israel, and I was flying back and forth from America to Israel, and I was not getting pregnant. It was stressful. It was hard. It was so hard on my marriage. At this point, of course, my American family knew what was going on. It was just, my husband was like, why can you not appreciate what we have? And I'm like, I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, it's not about that.
But like, I still have more to offer. Something is just, it's not done. And he's like, okay, you can use all the embryos in Israel. And then
we're done.
We're done. And he kept on giving me this number. He's like, when I'm 40, like, have as many kids as you want for us until I'm 40. He's 46 right, by the way. So, fine. I was going back and forth. It wasn't happening, and I used all my embryos. And I also didn't want to do another retrieval. It was really hard on my body. It's a huge hormonal process, and we agreed we'll do it one time. So we both had talked about adoption, and that was like our next avenue of trying.
That was on the table.
It was already on the table. Even before we knew we had problems, we had this like fantasy of having 2 biological and 2 adopted kids.
That's so amazing.
So it's amazing, except we just didn't have $30,000 to $40,000 in our pocket at this moment to try to adopt a newborn from an agency.
Right.
So we ended up trying to go through foster care, and we keep Shabbat, so we couldn't do all the testing, which in Georgia is like always on Saturday.
Right.
So it took us about a year to get certified, not to foster a child, but to foster to adopt. So like,
it's so crazy because there's so many children in need. So it's so shocking as an outsider to hear that. And also you would think a normal, nice family that, of course, you would be a shoo-in. You wouldn't think about.
But we ended up, and then the wait list for a newborn was 3 years. So my husband, who's like this altruistic, like doer, helper, he's like, let's adopt an older sibling unit. And I so badly wanted to get behind that. And for a year, I was like really into it, looking into it. And then I was like, I just want a baby who I can make like mine. And
Right.
I felt guilty and I felt horrible.
You can't help how you feel though.
And then
It
thankfully
wasn't your path.
I told him the truth, and he's like, okay. It's always like, okay, we'll do this for you. And after, some convincing. And I said, my office at Jewish Fertility Foundation is literally, I rent space from an adoption and surrogacy law firm. So I have like pregnant women coming in all the time. I'm like, I'm Elana. I could totally get a newborn.
Right.
I sent my profile we were we were certified to adopt. And I sent my profile to gynecologists and to NICUs, like I was going to get a baby. And we kept on getting rejected, because I had two cute little kids who are biologically mine. One of the rejections was like, you're not going to love my kid as much as your own. I'm like, I wouldn't be going through this process. Another random one was like, do you have acreage for horses? I'm like, I do not. But it's like random requests.
They're allowed to be that picky.
Yeah, of course. They are biological kids.
Very interesting. Wow.
Anyway, so like one of my passion projects is matching embryo donors to families who are looking to receive a donated embryo.
You're so noble. Wow.
It's super fun. So I wasn't thinking about that for myself. I didn't feel the need to be pregnant again. I did that. I was so fortunate, and I just wanted another baby. I didn't care how I was going to get it. And moral of the story is that somebody we had helped contacted me and was like, I'd like to donate my embryos. Can you help me? And I wasn't thinking of myself for months after months. But after another rejection, I said, well, what about me? And it was a match. And my husband, of course, was like, okay, how much is it going to cost? That was his literal response. And it was about $10,000.
Somebody has to be the practical one.
He didn't care. He's like, I'll make you happy until this point. Like, and
right.
How much is it going to, because adoption, remember, is like 30 to 40,000.
True.
This is like only 10, right? And there's no insurance coverage around any of this for sure in the state of Georgia. Anyway, moral of the story is I have a 1-year-old now from that process.
Unbelievable.
And, it's amazing. But I'll tell you, like, one of the things that was really hard for me is we started this organization 5 years ago, and we've been in the process of helping clients, and I got pregnant while I was in the process. And having to work with clients and having to, I don't know if I would say announce it, but like,
they're obviously going to
share
know.
it with my people. It was so hard. And I don't know, I'm curious how you're dealing with that now that you're public, you're out there.
Right.
We're so happy for you, but it's also really hard if I'm trying to get pregnant and you are now.
Oh yeah.
How's that feeling?
It's been a very jarring challenge. It's not that I was unaware of the effect that it would have on my infertility, pregnancy loss community. I've been there, but I guess like I felt like, what do you mean you're mad at me about the way that I'm handling this? I'm one of you, Right. I didn't feel like I 100% didn't feel like I graduated to pregnancy after everything that I had been through, both with infertility, secondary infertility, and then pregnancy loss. And it has been hard on a lot of people in my community to see, I guess, where I'm coming from with my announcement. And people have said that, I haven't been as sensitive as I should be. And that is really hard to hear. Because if somebody was to ask me what my cause is, it's this, this is where my heart is. This is what I think about every day. And it's forever a part of me, the pain that I've gone through and the emptiness and the loneliness and the loss that never goes away. And so, and I'm feel very grateful and very blessed to be in the situation I'm in now, but I don't know what tomorrow holds. I've been a victim of loss multiple times, and I don't know, and I live in fear every day. And so, it's just a complicated road to navigate. I don't really know how to go about it without, the last thing I ever want to do is hurt someone who's in pain. But what I've really had to realize is there are people who are in pain. And no matter what I do, I'm not going to be able to heal that for them.
Right.
Even if I want to. It's their path and it's their journey. And it's hard for me to let go of that because I am this idealistic person who wants to heal the world. And,
Yeah.
you know, as much as I have been the poster child for pregnancy loss, I'm not pregnant and this is my life. And my Instagram has always been about transparency and sharing my life. So I guess, you know, I want to be able to share it and celebrate it too. And I'm just trying to figure it out as I go. But it's definitely not easy. And I told my followers very openly, I said, I understand if you need to unfollow me right now or to mute me right now if it's painful for you, if it's a trigger for you, because you can't control what's going to cause you pain. You know, nobody wants to feel those feelings towards somebody. I mean, I remember when I was trying to get pregnant with my oldest and my sister-in-law, my husband's sister got pregnant before I did with her fourth. And I was thinking, God, that's not fair. But I wasn't mad at her, but it was still hard for me to be around her. And I sort of had to figure that out on my own. And I think, you know, it's just tough. There's no winning.
It's the same thing. It's like, you know, I remember, you know, Mother's Day is coming up. And I remember I guess it was 2 years ago now, I literally couldn't go to my own Mother's Day celebration for my mom, like with my family, because my sister and my sister-in-law had both just announced their pregnancies. Yeah. And I was so happy for them, obviously,
of course.
but I was so sad and distraught for myself. And it's hard to get it if you have, you know, you haven't been in that situation, but it's like just being honest and like, I didn't know what to do. I was honest and open. And like in your situation or in my situation, when I was pregnant with my son, while I was helping clients and working with people, I had to just be like, I have to tell you something. It's really awkward for
Here's
me.
the situation.
I don't know how to handle it. Like, I don't want to hide it. I'm pregnant. That's just, you know, and then sometimes people were like, oh my God, thank you so much for telling me. Like, that gives me so much hope. I'm like, and then I'll share my story and I see some people are asking questions. I was not a surrogate. My third child is not biologically related or embryo donor, but so that's kind of our relationship. But yeah, I mean, thanks for sharing that. I know it can be so awkward, you know, being public and being out there, but you have to do, you know, embrace it, enjoy it. Like, you were given this gift, and we encourage and hope our community can get to that place as well.
Right. And I do think, like you said, you know, openness and honesty is always the answer. Cheers to you. But yeah, I really do. I think like you can never go wrong with just being open and honest, and people aren't always going to be able to receive that, but that's, you know, something that they need to work through. And that's something that we both had to work through. And I'm sure it wasn't easy on your family for you not to be at that event, but it's better than you being there and having to leave in a, you know, in a very agitated or upset state. So,
and you know,
to protect yourself.
Like, my mom gets it. She didn't go through infertility, but she had a very late term stillborn. And she kind of relates that experience to what I've gone through.
Yeah.
And she's actually an intended grandparent fertility buddy right now.
That's so nice. Like, that's amazing.
I wish I had told her earlier what I was going through those first few months and year. And she knew for the 5 years that I was trying to have my third child, like, she knew every moment. Actually, we were living with her for 2 years, so she was like super involved. But I mean, she was part of the process. I remember one time I had just done an IVF cycle, and I'm the type of person, I don't recommend this, I'm the type of person who takes like 1 million pregnancy tests. Like, I order them from $1 from like Canada, and I take way too many, like starting day 6. And this cycle, like, I knew in my gut I wasn't pregnant, but I just kept on doing it. And I remember my sister was involved at this point. She's like, take more tests, take more tests. And my husband, and they were all negative. And my husband like went into the trash can and pulled it out, and the evaporation line was there. And he's like, I think it's positive. And I knew it wasn't. But like, I was living with my family, my parents at this time, and like the whole family knew all of this, and they also knew all the heartache that came along with it. And it was like, on one hand, it was really embarrassing. I didn't want my mom to like give me that look of like, sweetie, I'm so sorry. Like that was the worst thing for me going through it. But at the same time, having support versus having no support in the beginning,
oh my God,
was a huge difference. Okay, enough about me. So we actually have some great questions that people have been asking, and I think you might need to block somebody on your.
I see that. Hold on, I'm trying to figure out how to do it.
Sure. So
hide video. Okay, I think I did it. Okay, guys, I think I did it. Sorry, we're getting, when you haven't made it till you're getting heckled by a hater, I guess. I don't know.
It is like crazy what's going on out there. So we have some questions, and again, we were both very honest. Again, I hope my husband knows
not watching.
I am. Okay, so one of the questions we have is they would like us to talk about male infertility. Do you have anything to share? If not, I do.
I don't. I've known people who've experienced it, and I think it's something that needs to be talked about more. I think male infertility and also female infertility and what the male goes through that are things that are not addressed enough, for sure. I don't know if it has to do with men not wanting to talk about their emotions or that for whatever reason it's not addressed enough. But I would love to hear what you have to say.
So this is not something I talk about so much, but I will share. So the first 2 children tubes are blocked, and fast forward as my husband is getting older, his sperm actually is declining in quality. So, and also at this point, I was 39 years old when I was we were thinking about doing IVF again, and our doctor was like, we need to do it now, but I'm not sure we're going to be able to use your husband's sperm. After all these years, it was my problem. It was very interesting to understand that it was actually not only me.
The irony.
Even though a lot of our clients, like who are going through the process, it becomes the woman's issue, even if it's her husband's issue, which is really hard. And a lot of times the husband won't talk, like you were saying, like they won't talk about it. My husband would never talk about this. I'm happy to be open now. Why would he talk about this?
Right.
Anyway, so that was part of the reason that we decided to use an embryo donor, because at that point I was like, if it's not going to be biologically both of ours, I didn't care.
Right.
It didn't matter to me. So that's a very personal choice. I might have felt differently if I didn't already have 2 biological kids. But again, I just wanted another child at that point. But that's kind of our experience. It was not easy. Meeting with the doctors felt very different when it was talking about him.
I'm sure. I can only imagine.
It's just a different experience. It's much more common. It's not much more common. I mean, that's not true. It really is closer to 50-50 from what I understand in terms of male issue versus female. But
wow. You would never think that based on what people say, but yeah.
Right. Yeah, really, it legit is. Another question is about secondary infertility. I shared a little bit about mine. Like, honestly, even having 2 kids and being busy with them and going through 5 years versus like both of us, where it just kind of worked, after some time, the first time, it was so much more challenging. I mean, it was just miss after miss after miss, and just, I didn't ever think it was going to happen the way it did.
And I mean, you shared with me the stress that it put on your family and on your marriage, and I definitely share in those feelings and the feelings of guilt that, you have 2 healthy kids at home and you still, not enough for you. And it wasn't that it wasn't enough for me. And I don't think it was that it wasn't enough for you, but we just had this, we knew that that wasn't our path. We knew that we weren't done. And I don't think that it's something that's rational or logical. And it's
Right.
just, it's an animal instinct and it's an urge and you can't fight it. And doesn't matter what anyone says to you. And it doesn't mean that you
Right.
love your kids any less. It took me a really long time to kind of let go of the guilt that I had associated and not wanting to try this pastime for, after 3 losses was mostly
Right.
due to the fact that I didn't want to take away any more time from my family
Yeah,
and
like
energy.
even my husband and I were in therapy for the past few years. And looking back now, it feels crazy. But at that time, I was on such like a path. Like, this is my destiny. I am going to do everything in my power, everything to try to have another child,
Right.
even if it meant divorce him. And like, we didn't really use the D word,
No,
but like in my head, I was like, this is like, I will do anything. Like, I didn't need him at that point if I was going to adopt. I don't know what I was thinking, but it was just,
it's not rational.
happened. He told me the last time I did IVF, my mom and him decided we're not living with my parents anymore. But they decided one afternoon I was receiving 2 embryos, and in my head I'm like, oh, if it doesn't work the first time, I'll do it again. And they like sat me down and had a real conversation. They're like, we cannot deal with you anymore.
Right.
You are going to put both embryos in. And I'm like, it could be twins. They're like, we will.
We don't care.
You're not going through this another month with you.
Right.
And it was like a lot of pressure because that was my very last time. Like, my husband was like, I'm out. Like, not leaving, but like, we're done
with this.
Yeah, he's like, this is not what he wanted. He always talked about like, I'm not going to do anything beyond the age of 40, and he's 46. So it's like,
and you have a 1-year-old.
I have a 1-year-old.
Right.
So
you win.
He's happy.
Yeah, of course.
We love this kid. We love all of them, but like we feel really, really lucky.
I mean, and I think your story and mine are both such a testament to like, you have this plan, but it has nothing to do with what's actually going to happen. You can plan all you want. And we both knew that we were willing to do whatever it took, even once our plan that we had was out the window. We weren't done. We were still full force ahead with whatever we had to do. But, it worked out in its own way. And, I have no regrets at all. Like, I do feel like I was in a very dark, depressed place. I was counseling someone this week about who's going through an ectopic pregnancy, and just, I remember it doesn't take much for me to go back to that place to remember how low and dark it was, but I wouldn't take it back for anything. And I feel, we've been able to use our pain to channel it to help other people and to keep pushing ahead, which is a gift, and in the end, even though it took such a toll on my marriage and my family in the moment, my husband and I are so much stronger, and he'll be the first one to tell you that. And my kids too, they're a part of this all. They're old enough now to understand, and it's part of our family story. And I think, and that's great. I don't.
When my son, he's almost 9 now, and I remember when he was 2 years old and he wrote me a Mother's Day card, his teachers were like, how does he know the word embryo? How does he know the word petri dish? And then like Dr. Neatsry, he was a part of her story.
Right.
And like, it's true. We teach them at a very young age, like how they came about. They always joke that my middle child, he was in the freezer for a little over a year.
We say the same thing. We called Juliet Elsa. We're like, you were frozen.
So we're like, are you cold? Avidan, are you cold? Are you cold?
I hope we don't give them a compliment, but I would rather be honest. I would rather them not find out later, that they're fraternal twins, technically.
They always say that when people, because they look alike. And so people are always like, are you guys twins? And they're like, well, kind of.
Yeah.
Try to go into it and explain it. And people are like, that's a lot of information. We just thought you were cute and we're asking you. Yes, we're very open in our family.
Right.
So another question is, and this is a good question, is when do you think it's time to seek treatment?
Right.
At what point did you finally, I guess, see a doctor?
Well, I think that they typically say after you've been trying for a year. I was reading some information about it today. My friend Sharon Maisel, she was one of the co-authors of What to Expect series. She had posted some statistics about infertility, and they do say that
Right.
a normal healthy person can be trying for a year with nothing. So, but I know most people these days, especially in the culture that we live in, have a hard time waiting that long. Um, by the time that we ended up getting to that doctor's appointment, it had been over a year. But I would tell
Mhm.
someone now, if you have an inkling that your periods are irregular, or if something is, if you have an instinct that something is wrong, then check it out, because you're never gonna, the worst, I mean, the best case scenario is they tell you nothing's wrong, keep going, keep trying. So
Right. I agree with you. Trust your gut. I think that for me, after trying for 3 months, I just went to the doctor, and thank God I started that early, because it took me a while to finally get a diagnosis.
it is
And
so interesting that they ask you in Israel, how long have you been married? I wonder if they still do that. They just assume that you're gonna start
right.
trying for a baby right away.
I think so. I think I recently heard that was just common practice
Common.
there. Yeah, it worked for me, but I felt lucky.
Right, right, yeah. But I do think we know ourselves,
I think so.
there.
Especially throughout this process, you definitely get to know
Oh,
your body.
oh yeah.
So what are some of the most supportive things that friends have said to you, and what are some of the least supportive things? Some things that like perhaps really hurt.
Right. This is such a tough one because everyone means well. And, I think it's so hard being in the Jewish community and being in the modern Orthodox world where everyone's having babies all the time, and people do
Yep.
say thoughtless things like, so when are you going to have a baby? How many kids do you want? I mean, nobody means any harm, but those things cut deep when you're going through something really hard. I think, just the best thing for me, like I said earlier, was having those resources, those people that weren't necessarily close friends that I had, that I knew had been through stuff. Even if it wasn't that they had been through IVF, I had one friend who had had a miscarriage, just so that I didn't feel alone. Um, I think the best thing that anyone can say in that situation is you're not alone, and I'm here for you if you want to talk, and if you don't, I get that too, because
Yeah.
there are plenty of moments where you don't want to. What about you?
So I think that two things stick out in my mind. One is, this was like the beginning days of my infertility journey, and I was taking a walk with like a really good friend who like had sex and gets pregnant, and which is like shocking.
They don't know how lucky they are.
I know.
They have
And
their own problems.
and
Everyone has problems.
she was telling me this story about how like she kind of just feels like God like gives babies to people who like can handle it. And I was like, I don't know how to react to that. But like at that time I was so like deep in it, and I'm just like, oh my God, first of all, maybe that's true.
You're like, is
Second
God
of all,
punishing me?
like, and she's like, no, 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 not you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we didn't last as friends long. But like I got so inside of myself that I was like, maybe something is wrong. Maybe this isn't in God's path. Like really, maybe. And then I would get in my head of like, is this really the approach? Is this really how it's supposed to happen? Thank God I really do believe in medicine, and it's not all about medicine. There is the God factor as well. And then some of the like also people, even when I was trying again, I'm a working mom. That's how I know I'm best at, like, I'm my best self by being a working mom.
Right.
And people were asking me, they're like, well, why are you trying for a third if you like aren't even with your kids during the day? And I'm like, would you ask that of somebody who got pregnant naturally? Like, and I couldn't believe I had to explain myself.
Yeah,
I think
people are judgmental.
one of the best, most supportive things, even though it was whatever, it was about her, but it was my sister-in-law had just gotten pregnant. And I obviously knew like I knew they were trying to get pregnant I knew I would be so happy. And she kept on calling me on the phone. She's like, hey, you want to grab lunch? I'm like, we never go to lunch. That's just not our thing. And I'm like, Marty, you can tell me, like, tell me you're pregnant. Just tell me, you know? And she's like, I'm pregnant. I wanted to tell you face to face. Like, I know what you're going through right now. And I'm like, that's all that matters. Like, thank you so much for telling me before you announced it, first of all. Like, because, you know, they're big social media announcers. Like, I am a little bit more sensitive because of what I've gone through. Also, I'm like always nervous, like something is going to happen. And so I didn't, you know, always want to have like that, those pictures online. Even when my sister-in-law and I were pregnant this last time, all of us together, everybody thought it was the cutest thing. We were all going to have boys, and I could never take a picture with them because I was so paranoid of like having it public and then having, God forbid, when something happened to me and I was going to have a loss, like I didn't want it, you know, documented, which is like, it's crazy when you're looking at it, but it's how I felt.
No, it's, yeah. It's what worked for you in the moment.
I think we have time for one more question. Is that?
Yeah, perfect.
So I think you had mentioned this earlier that you were counseling somebody who had just had a loss, but especially around, you know, COVID, we're all home. You can't hug your friends if they've gone through something scary. Do you have any feedback on how you're helping your friends? Especially with little kids at home, you know, how are you spending time with people who need you most now? Is there anything you can say or not say while they're going through this?
I think just putting it out there that you're there as a listening ear, you know, one of you know, it's very hard to be public about these things, but one of the best gifts of it is that people know that they can reach out. And I'm so glad that they do. And even if I don't have the answers, you know, I'm now hooked up with you guys. I have a great relationship with Nahama Comfort, who counsels people through pregnancy loss. And so, you know, being able to direct them to the right places. But I think it's just so important for people to feel heard and in these times, you know, a lot of people who are going through infertility, their treatments have been put on pause. I know some are resuming now, but that's a really frustrating situation. I have another friend who's about to go through IVF for the first time, and she's been calling me freaking out. Is this a bad time? Do I wait? And, you know, these are questions I maybe can't answer, but I can be there as an ear. And, you know, I think that goes underrated, just being able to listen as somebody who's been there. And that makes me feel like a good friend, just when people feel heard. When they're in pain.
And again, like going back to the, like, I want to be there for you. I don't really know what to say, but I just want to be here for you in whatever, you know, in whatever way you need me to be. Right. We actually have, with Jewish Fertility Foundation, we have a list of like things to say, things not to say when you're going through infertility, when you have.
Will you send me that so I can post it after? Okay.
Absolutely.
I'll post it for you guys.
And yeah, I mean, I just think this has been awesome. This is really, you know, interesting for me to learn about your story and be able to share mine.
Right. And I love being able to introduce people, like, you know, there are so many people who follow me who are experiencing these things, and having another resource, whether it be for emotional support, you know, it's so much more than just financial support. And people often don't think about the education element and the mikvah and all the dynamics that go on. And, you know, to be able to say, guys, Jewish Fertility Foundation is there for you. I can't answer this, but they can, is really a huge deal, you know?
Actually, we have an event, if it's okay.
Yeah, please tell everyone.
We know Mother's Day can be a really challenging time for our community. Even for people who currently have kids, you know, just remembering the moments when we did not. We're having a Mother's Day yoga therapy event. It's confidential, anonymous, but it's virtual now. And that means that we're able to open it up to everyone. So it's free. We have some great prizes. I see J Screen is here. They're offering a free J Screen test. Also, we have like really cool, fabulous prizes. But I encourage everybody to sign up. Of course, it's free at jewishfertilityfoundation.org/yoga. so
I'm
that we
gonna
can
post
send,
it too for you
do
guys.
it. I'll
Yes,
send
I
you
will.
some stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's open to everyone, regardless of religious background, family, friends, and loved ones who are experiencing infertility.
Right.
And
I love that you're doing it on Mother's Day because I think it's such a good day to feel like you're part of a bigger group who's maybe feeling the same way you are.
yep, yep.
Really important.
Yeah, so this has been awesome. I encourage people
Yeah.
to follow Jewish Fertility Foundation on
Yes, everyone
social
follow
media.
Jewish Fertility Foundation.
Yay.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you, Elana. I'm so
I
glad we did
appreciate
this.
it.
And I
And me
hope that
too.
this will be the beginning of a lot of partnerships and just, spreading awareness about these issues. So thank you for all that you do for our community and for the world.
Ditto. And I
Thank
hope
you.
you're feeling good, stay
Thank you.
healthy, and keep us in the know about what's going on.
All right, I will. You too. Have a good
Thank
night.
you.
Enjoy your wine.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Cheers, babe.
Thank you.
All
Bye
right.
bye.
Bye, guys. Have a good night. Bye, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in.